Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So, today we are here with Antoinette Redmond and Ivory Duncan, who both work with neurodiverse communities here in Kansas City. This interview falls within Autism Awareness Month. So, we're extra excited to hear about their work and their vision for making Kansas City a more inclusive place. So, thank you guys so much for being here today. We appreciate both of you. Would you guys start by just telling us a little bit about your families?
Yeah, so
You want
good.
to go? I was going to say, whoever wants to go first. Great.
You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Antoinette Redmond, and our son was first diagnosed with autism in December of 2020.
Okay.
During that time, I expected like a roadmap, some guidance, resources to really navigate this new reality. Instead, I had a packet of resources and was patted on my back and sent on my way. And
Right.
so this really motivated me to just start diving into a community and figuring out what I could do to best serve my child. Fast forward to April of last year, our daughter was also diagnosed with autism. And 4 years later, nothing about this process after the diagnosis had changed. And
That's
so
awesome.
that is why I created Nuru, is to really be a platform that centralizes resources for families like mine so that no parent or mom has to feel isolated and alone when they first hear that something is wrong with their child. I am born and raised in Kansas City, so Kansas City is my home. It's where I plan to raise our children, and I'm looking forward to doing this alongside Ivory.
That's awesome. Antoinette, real quick, how old are your kids? You have a son and a daughter.
Yes, and I
How old are
also have
your
an
kids now?
oldest one.
Oh, and an
Yes, so
oldest. How
our
old are your
yeah,
kids?
yes, my bonus son is 18, and
Okay.
then we have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Ivory, tell us about
Sure.
your family.
Sure. So I'm a single mom. I have a 8-year-old. I keep saying seven. He just turned eight. And
Yep, it's
so
important.
I have an 8-year-old. And I learned he was on the autism spectrum when he was 4. Prior to that, I've been an educator for over 15 years, former assistant principal. Most of my career was in Chicago. I am born and raised here in Kansas City, but I moved to Chicago right after college, and I just moved back 2 years ago. And so my background is in education, working with young people, high schoolers. I've worked with young people who were on the autism spectrum, but I didn't see the signs in my own son until he was around 3 or 4. Primarily, it showed up in his speech. And prior to that, in my work in education, I had always done inclusivity work. As a leader of a school, I had worked with teachers on how to create like culturally responsive classrooms. But it wasn't until I had my own son, and on top of the fact that he is a young African American boy in this society, learning that he was on the autism spectrum, that I had to begin to really walk the talk in terms of like inclusive practices in my personal life. And so, fast forward, I moved back home to Kansas City 2 years ago because life shift happened. And so I was like, this is a time to, I have all of these years of experience as an educator, and now I'm an autism mom. Why don't I create a platform for parents like me who are looking for a society where their children can feel safe and accepted and embraced? And I feel like it was all sort of like in divine order. I had this experience as an educator. I'm incredibly passionate about
Mhm.
inclusivity and equitable practices. And now my son is a part of a community that is often marginalized. So I found it to be not only necessary, but perhaps using my privilege as an educator to support other moms who don't have the same background as I do. And so, Embracing Neurodiversity is an education consulting firm. We work with parents and families in the IEP process. You did not ask me about that yet. You asked me about my family, so
Uh,
I'll stop there.
you share
No, you're
whatever you
doing
want
great.
to. Yes.
It's a
Okay.
perfect segue. So
Yeah.
if you can
Perfect
Yes.
segue.
tell us
Okay.
more
Yes. Tell us
so we
more.
can understand what
Yes.
you each individually do and then how you work
Absolutely.
together.
Right.
Yes. So in terms of my consulting company, I started it in November of 2022, probably 6 months after I moved back to Kansas City. And it started out as like I wanted to kind of talk about my experience. As I mentioned, I'm uniquely positioned because also a single mom, and so it can sometimes be overwhelming. So I started a podcast first, where I just started to talk about how to navigate this journey as a parent, what I'm learning along the way, and then I would infuse and incorporate some educational practices too because of my background. And the podcast was getting such positive reception that I started to support other parents in the IEP process, and it just started to build from there. And then I met Antoinette, a colleague of ours, knew that we were doing similar work in the neurodiversity community and connected us. And we decided to start to host sensory friendly events in the Kansas City area. One of the huge burdens and barriers for families is that we want to take our children out to play, to enjoy activities just like any other child, any neurotypical child. But our children, more often than not, children on the autism spectrum experience sensory overload. They can get overwhelmed by crowds or by other non-sensory friendly spaces. And so we're often hesitant to take our children to spaces that are not supportive of them. And so we were like, let's create our own spaces for our children. And we hosted our first event last October, and it was a huge success and turnout. And now we're working on making that a normalcy in the Kansas City area.
Amazing.
It's awesome.
So cool.
And Antoinette, you've had some recent like big wins for your organization. Do you want to talk about that and what you see as the future?
Yes, so I am building New Roots, a transformational digital platform designed to really empower families that are navigating a developmental delay or diagnosis. And we are doing that by having a centralized platform where parents are able to centralize their medical, therapeutic, and educational records. Because as a mom of two that are on individualized education plans, it is a lot of paperwork to constantly sort through or find. And so having that uploaded into one centralized platform is what we are building. Then other comprehensive features that will be on our website is a directory of federal, state, and local resources, a healthcare directory. So if you're looking for a chiropractor, a dentist, or a mental health therapist that is serving or dedicated to providing an inclusive environment for neurodivergent families and children and adults, we'll have that there. We also are creating a community calendar. So there are so many amazing organizations in Kansas City that are hosting different events and activities and recreation leagues. And if you are not plugged into each and every one of those, you will lose it. You won't be able to find them, or you'll get some FOMO, like I have experienced several times, where you'll see a picture of an amazing event and you missed it because you didn't know. And so we're creating a community calendar that has all these different organizations listed, and then a sensory store. So 35 curated items that are in our house, tried and true, that my children will circle through, play with. And so that will be available to support local, because there is a lot of movement towards supporting local, and we're excited to be able to bring that through our platform.
That's so cool. So cool. I love the store idea. That's a really
Yes, me too.
That's so creative. So in Kansas City, what are some encouraging signs that you ladies have seen or experienced firsthand that show that our city is inclusive?
That's a really great question. And what I've seen is that there are several organizations that are open or have hosted sensory friendly events or dates and times. So immediately I think about Wonderscope, Science City, Urban Air, that have sensory friendly dates and times, and they publish their calendar for the whole entire year. And so it's a dedicated time where the music is off, the lights are dimmed, but more importantly, parents know that they can bring their child and allow them to be free. And parents aren't, other parents aren't looking at them as, why is your child just galloping? Or why is your child stimming and making these noises, but yet they're super happy? So there is a lot of great movement. Secondly, I will also say that there is a lot of movement towards creating an inclusive classroom. So I've seen in our own child's school, our middle child is in first grade, and they do not have any regular seating. And when I say that, it's just like, a regular seat that you would go in it. Like none of the children have that. And all of them have some type of adaptive seating. And so schools are recognizing that not only if we have different seats, children are more engaged to get their wiggles or just be more comfortable while they learn. It's helping the children that are neurodiverse also thrive within the classroom. So I've seen it both educationally and socially, that is really encouraging to me as a mom.
That's awesome.
One of the things I thought was interesting in the conversations we've had with you, because we're working together on a sensory hour for our egg hunt. But you touched on it a little. Can you talk more about like the judgment of other parents? Because I think sometimes when we hear like sensory friendly, we think of the low lights and the, music and all that, but you forget how like different your experience is at an event and just people not understanding.
Right.
And that's one thing that was really impactful when we had a conversation of just, I thought about a lot of just the reaction of others to things that might not seem typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add also to the original question, and I hope this responds to your question, that while you can see that there has been an attempt in the past couple of years in the city for there to be more inclusive spaces for children that are on the autism spectrum, I personally think that it's still not enough, because only the people who have access to the knowledge and resources have access to those opportunities. And so to your point around like the judgment piece, a lot of that comes because people aren't always around other children who show up differently in the world, right? Or maybe they have a different affect, and if you don't see it often, you're going to look at it as not normal or abnormal. And so my push is that, yes, while we are moving in a direction where there are sensory friendly events or sensory friendly hours, I think that when we have every space that is sensory friendly 24/7, then when we support the most marginalized, then we support everyone around us. And when we include children who are neurodiverse with neurotypical children more often than not, then it becomes normalized. And even parents begin to like look less at other families with judgment because they've seen it more than they haven't. And so oftentimes, even when internet and our planning events, I often push that we host our event in public spaces where children like ours aren't always invited. Sorry to your listeners, I am working through a code. And so with that, to your point, I also think that one of the reasons why I do this work is so that parents who don't have children who are on the autism spectrum can hear and see our own experience and barriers and begin to empathize as much as they can to lessen that judgment, because it is a real thing. And that's more often than not why a lot of parents don't like to take their children out. It's less about the space isn't fit, but more like they don't want to experience that judgment.
Yeah.
So to the moms listening who maybe go to a park and see a child on the spectrum acting differently than they've seen before, what is your wish that those parents would coach their kids or do themselves to help that be a better experience for families like yours?
That's a good question.
Sorry, I kind of sprung that one on you.
I know.
No, it's okay.
I love that question because, like, as a parent, as a teacher, I'm so passionate about that, and like, I'm very like almost to the point of obsessive of wanting to raise my kids who are both neurotypical to be inclusive, to be curious, to be always kind. But I think like just this goes for anything, but just teaching our kids to maintain an attitude of curiosity and not
Yes.
judgment. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
really
Yes.
interesting that that little boy is doing that. I wonder why he's doing that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Rather than like, oh, that's weird, or that's, or he shouldn't
Right.
be
Right.
making noise when it's supposed to be quiet, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
I
interested to hear your feedback on that, both of you.
Hmm.
Definitely. I think a park in such a public space where you just enter and observe someone that is showing up differently, you're going to have those curiosities. The best thing you want to do, I love what you said, Sarah, in terms of like, leaning into the curiosity. A lot of parents will say, like, stop staring or don't ask. That's actually not the way thing you want to do. It's okay to
Right,
engage.
right,
But more often than not, when I take Khalil to the park, the children are the it's the parents usually are the ones that are like, reserve the children. They'll probably notice if they engage with my son. My son's autism shows up mostly in his speech being delayed. And so if they
okay,
engage with my son in conversation and he doesn't respond, I've noticed that sometimes children are like, but they don't make it a thing. They'll just
right,
sort of like go along and play,
right,
or they'll play alongside of him. And so more often than not, I would suggest to a parent to sort of just like hands off and be observant,
yes,
and let the children sort of figure it out. But in addition to that, these are public spaces. If you have neurodiverse children in your family or a close friend with a neurodiverse child, set up play dates with your neurotypical children so that they can learn about children who show up differently in the world more
right,
intimately in private spaces, so that when they're in public spaces, it's not a thing because they know a neighbor, a friend, a family member. I would start there,
Mhm.
and then everything else sort of like works itself out. So
that's
I
great.
would also like to add about parents answer your child's question truthfully. Like
Yes,
my
yep,
child will stim and he does it by moving his hands really fast or moving his feet. And
mhm,
children are curious. They will ask, what is he doing? And
right,
mm-hmm,
oftentimes parents will like, stop, like that. It's
mm-hmm,
no,
Mhm.
no, no. Or it's the same thing of when someone asks, like, why are they brown? Why are they black?
right,
Explain it and explain it in a child appropriate way. Don't shy away from it. Explain it to them. Because you don't want to shut down that curiosity, because what happens is when you push it aside, it turns into fear, fear turns into hate. And
right,
so answer the question. And if you don't have the answer, ask the mom. Or research it. Go look at those things. There's tons of, short Instagram stories or reels that you could learn more about stimming or just fast hand movement, and answer your child's question. And so, if we want to raise kind children, there are books that support neurodivergent. And I'm gonna get a shout out to Ivory. She's written like 5, 6 books that
oh
really
my gosh, yeah,
highlight the
so
the
good,
autism neurodivergent community. Incorporate that into your reading time. Answer your child's question truthfully so that they are able to build their awareness, and it's not something that's different. And I know, I just want to emphasize what Ivory had said and highlight in our own family. I have a niece who is 4 years old, and she's been raised around our family, and so she knows Braden has autism and he has these different quirks.
yep,
Well, she goes to an inclusive private school, and there are children that have a hearing aid or other different needs. And she just noticed it, said, oh, so and so has a hearing aid, and kept it moving. Like it wasn't even
mhm,
something, it was like, I noticed it and I still play with her. Like it's not a big deal.
mhm,
So the
mhm,
more you can educate your child in a meaningful way through books, through TV, through just talking with them, the more inclusive environments we can build together.
right, right, and
yes,
yeah,
thank you
I,
for that. And I was going to say in my books really quickly, there's at the end of each book, there's a page with note to parents, and it gives them talking points on if their
oh,
children ask about autism or differences, how to say it in a child friendly way. So thank you
I
for
love
that, because
that.
that's the thing that I found to be important.
I love that.
Absolutely.
That's so great. So, kind of in the
Mhm.
same vein, you ladies were talking about things that you've seen that are positive in Kansas City. Um, and I feel like one of you talked a little bit about room for growth. Anything else that
Mhm.
comes to mind in our city specifically where you guys would love to see things improve?
Yes, I have a list, but I'll just name mostly in the
Girl,
Go
in
for
the
it.
it's
education
your
system.
time. Now is your time.
Yeah,
Seriously,
thank
share your
you.
list. I mean, I'm like genuinely very, very interested to hear. I
Yes,
love like, and I love, and sorry, I don't mean to, like take over take
that's
over
okay.
answer. Let me answer. One thing I thought was interesting that you ladies said was the sensory friendly time, I also think is great, but I loved what you said about how it would be really nice in a perfect world to just have it all be the same. I know not
Mm-hmm,
everything can be sensory friendly,
mm-hmm,
obviously, but I do part of me does hate that like separation a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it shows
yeah,
consideration, but then it also is a further divide a little bit.
Right.
Right, right.
yeah,
And it goes
yeah.
along with the universal design principle, right? In the you when we think about the curb cut theory, we don't think about, that was built for folks that have low vision or that may be visually impaired. But
Sure.
how many moms have benefited from having that dip in the curve with their stroller, with their
Right.
toddler that don't
Yeah.
have to do that? When
Yep.
in Ivory was spot on when she said when we create these sensory and friendly environments, it benefits all. It's
Right.
that principle of rising tide lifts all boats. And
Yes.
so, that universal design that we can create sensory friendly events at all times. We are
Yep.
moving towards that direction. We need to do more. But I will stop there and let Ivory talk about her list of things because
Yes.
we can go on and on, but it's that principle that when we really do build inclusive practices into everything that we do, people will benefit. Like how many
Absolutely.
of us go to Siri and say, "Hey Siri, like find this or that." Who was that built for?
Right.
That was built for a marginalized population.
Yes.
We
Yes.
all benefit.
That's a great
Mm-hmm,
point.
That's such a good
mm-hmm,
point. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree. Okay, I want to hear everything on your list. Go.
Well, well, mostly I wanted to just kind of start with the two big buckets that affect our families, and that's the healthcare and the education system. And so, even in the education system, I moved back to, I mentioned to you, I moved back to Kansas City 2 years ago. But before I moved back, I did extensive research around what schools were going to be able to support Caleel in his autism. I'm an educator in the public school systems. I've been a product of the public school systems, and I do believe in them. And so I wanted to provide that for Caleel. But the public school systems don't always have the resources, the funding to support our children who are neurodiverse. And so I had to make a decision to move in an area where I knew that they were going to have the resources to provide for my son, but I oftentimes, because I come from a community that is under resourced, I oftentimes think about those families too. Like, what about kids who mothers or parents don't have the knowledge, the skill set, the research
Mhm.
acumen to look for something for their child? And as someone who consults in public school systems that are unfortunately under resourced, I see every day how they put our children in subset rooms and again isolate and separate them, or they don't have the resources to pay adults who are trained enough to support our children behaviorally,
Right.
academically, and socially emotionally. And so they're like, it's not necessarily the school's fault. Everything starts with funding and kind of trickles down. But if you don't have the resources, you're sort of like, I don't know what to do with the child. We're just going to put them over here and
Yep.
hope that they don't cause any trouble. And so imagine, the impact of that long term for young people. So that is one, is that the funding doesn't always go to our children who with special learning differences or who are in special education in the way that they should. Not to mention, when we host our IEP workshop last week, we collaborated with Latinx Education Collaborative and Rev
Oh.
Ed, who work with
Mhm.
families who are Spanish speakers. So, on top of the fact that you may have not have the income to provide for your child educationally, you also may have English as a barrier. And
Right.
so, what is happening to your child? A mom shared a story of her child is now a junior in high school, and they can't count to 100, and they've been pushed through the system all of these years, and this is in the Kansas City area.
Yep.
And and so uh, that is where the highlight of the pervasive systematic impact
Right.
is at. And so we can certainly do better in that area. And the same applies in healthcare. When I first moved back, I couldn't find, and this is why Antoinette's app I think is going to be so important in the future for families. I couldn't find the resources and support that he truly needed that were culturally responsive to his needs as well. And I want to be candid, but also kind when I say that a lot of the therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists are white women, and they are incredibly skilled and great. My son's speech therapist is amazing, but more often than not, and maybe I had that highlight having lived in Chicago for so long, I did want to see practitioners who looked like and reflected our background.
Absolutely.
And that is an issue across the country, but that is not readily available here in Kansas City either. We already have low resources. There are already tons of waiting lists for our children in terms of their therapies, but even those organizations are not reflective of particularly people of color who have children who are neurodiverse. So I'll just start there. I'll stop there
No,
because we don't have an next
that's
for those that
so
like to
good,
do that.
Ivory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a off the script question? Do you
Sure.
guys know statistically what are, you don't have to give me a number, and you may not even know a number, for the non-white community, is there a particular number of, what am I trying to say? Percentage of people, Sarah goes, I have
Who
no
are
idea what you're trying to
diagnosed,
say.
maybe?
Yes, or
Diagnosed or
yes, people
provided.
diagnosed with
Okay.
autism.
Yeah.
Is there a, like for example, I know girls typically lower rate of diagnosis for autism.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
is there some truth to that with people of color in the autism community?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we know, according to the Centers for Disease and Control, 1 in 36 children in the US will have autism.
Okay.
The rate of children that are in Black and Brown communities getting diagnosed early, and when we say early,
Hmm.
around the ages of 2 to 4,
Right.
are incredibly lower than white communities. And that's just how racism and biases shows up in healthcare, is
Yeah.
there's a lot of let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. And not, again, knowing how to navigate these systems in order to get on a waiting list, to get evaluated for autism, and being able to access those resources. And one of those resources that we had when our child received diagnosis is being able to get a handicap placard. And you're probably wondering, like, why do you need a handicap placard? Several children that are autism may elope. And what that means is that
Right.
you turn your head and they are darting the opposite direction.
Right.
And so having a handicap placard allows us to park close to the front entrance, and it allows for easier access because usually it's next to a cart bin. It allows us to get the kid in the cart, go into the store, and then come back and do the same, get them back in the car. And so it just is really critical to have that diagnosis because it opens up resources, even though it's not necessarily coordinated, it opens up these resources that we may not be able to access without that formal diagnosis.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
interesting. So,
Yeah.
Ivory, do you have something to add to that? Go ahead.
Well, kind of. I just wanted
Girl,
to add
add,
this really quick
please.
point around the diagnosis piece
Yeah.
is that also culturally in our community, if there are signs of your child showing up as having indicators of autism, not even just like in communities of color, but I think across the board, parents are afraid that their child will be labeled or judged, and so they're resistant to seeking out a diagnosis. But to Antoinette's point, a diagnosis really truly just opens the door for access to resources. But then in the medical field, they're resistant because they know the resources are limited, and so oftentimes a child has to show up more evident in order. So there's two levels to that. But if parents are hearing this and they're like, I think that maybe my child may be showing signs of autism, but I'm nervous, I don't want that label on them, just be reminded that it's less about the stigma, although there is a stigma, and more about how can I support my child long
Yes.
term. So I just wanted to name that as well.
And
Yeah.
Ivory,
Yeah.
that
That's
is
so important.
perfect. And that's one of the things that I wanted to respond with was, what did I wish the community would know?
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would know and understand that my kids aren't broken and they don't
Yes.
need to be fixed. They don't need that. There's not this cure. There's not like they're not broken.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
they have unique gifts and beauty within them that is just different from anybody else. Like our daughter is so musically talented that it is frightening. She can memorize these shows and these
Mhm.
songs, and the way that music just when it turns it on just hits her body and she just is so free and loose. You can see that that is her gift, is that she is musically talented. Our son, when you put a puzzle down in front of him, most people need to start on the edges, find the corners, put those together, then find the middle. He doesn't. He can start at any point in the puzzle and put it together. That ability to put these pieces together is so beautiful. And so it's not that I want people to understand that my child is different, but he's not broken. He
Right.
doesn't need
Mhm.
fixing. He it just experiences and feels and thinks of the world a lot differently. And the other thing that I wish people would then adapt is we hear oftentimes about code switching, right? If you're in a Black and brown community, that means you talk a certain way when you're with your friends and family, and then when you go into an environment that may not accept you for who you are, you have to switch.
Okay.
There is beauty in my children saying exactly what they feel and exactly how they feel in that way. And I wish that we would adapt that. Think
Yeah.
about how often we could get straight to the point
Yeah. Yep.
without all this extra fluff and waste of time if we can
Mhm.
just be honest and transparent.
Yep.
And sometimes it stings. It stings a little bit when he'll come
Yep.
and stiff my head and he'll be like, Mommy, your hair stinks.
Oh yeah. No filter. No
I will
filter.
go
It is
shower.
so, it is so, it is
I
so
will go
refreshing.
shower.
Yep.
Yes, it
Oh,
is. Yes.
absolutely.
I think it's a, honestly, I think that is a, dare I say, perk of autism. I mean, truly, it's
Hmm.
like, I
Seriously.
love people who shoot straight. So a lot of times kids with autism are my favorite because I'm like,
Yes.
thank you. I mean, there's just no filter. It's great.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
we'll ask our daughter, be like, hey, can you go put this up? No, I don't want to. And she's turning and moving and doing something else. And there's like, no, like, you can't ask it in the form of a question, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
you can't
Right.
Uh-huh.
ask her, can you? You have to tell her, go do it. Or
Mhm.
Right.
else if you give her
Mhm.
that and she answers it, and that is so beautiful. And honestly,
Right.
like, I've adapted in a lot of my way of moving and doing business. Like,
Mhm.
we don't have time to waste, and I'm straight to the
Yes.
point because it is a beautiful trait that, and a freeing trait that I don't have
Totally.
to be this person. I could be me. Of course, respectfully, and I'm not perfect in any way. There are learnings that I've had along the way, and thankful to Ivory and my husband and my family for that coaching. But like it is so freeing to just
Mhm.
come in and be me
Right.
and do it in a way that that really I feel like honors my kids.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
So
love what
cool.
you were saying too
Mhm.
about how your kids aren't broken. I read a thread the other day on
Mhm.
Facebook. I'm trying to remember what group it was in, some group, and it was talking about kids with autism and not just the language around it. And it made me think of this book I had. I probably still have it in the library somewhere for my kids that are 7 and 10, and it's called Everyone Has Something. And
Mhm.
it basically just talks about how
That's so true.
everybody's got something. Like
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
nobody is, normal. Nobody is, without
Mhm.
quirks. And
Mhm.
Hmm.
I just really like that idea of, especially kids with autism, so often are so insanely talented
Yes.
um in so many different ways
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a gift and it's in a way. Or I think
It
it is
is
a
a
gift.
gift.
Yes.
It is a
Yes.
It
gift.
is a
Right.
gift.
And sometimes we
Absolutely.
stifle that gift because we're spending so much time trying to get them to conform
Yes.
socially.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a
I
Yes.
lot
love
of,
that point.
you know,
I love
I've
that.
I've
Mhm.
read a lot of literature that adults with autism write about their experience growing up to inform like how
Hmm.
I want to raise my child. And they say that one of the things they felt that they call it masking, they had to
Yes. Yes.
mask some of their
Yes.
quirks, and that stifled them along the way.
Right.
And this is easier said than done because I'll be honest, sometimes I'm afraid that, sometimes I'm like, Caleel, calm down because I'm afraid that he'll be
Yeah.
judged or that he'll
Right.
be
Yeah.
harmed because of his difference. And so,
Yeah.
how
Right.
do as parents we balance this idea of like, we want you to show up in the world as yourself, but we also want you to be mindful that everybody doesn't understand how you show up, and that can be detrimental to your safety, which
Yes.
is an ongoing work. But
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
conversations like this hopefully will help.
Oh, yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So I'm a little playing out that. I'm curious how, I mean, you are fierce advocates and do it with a lot of joy.
Yeah.
I'm curious how the current political environment, where I think we are hearing, I mean, I'm more in the ADHD community, and I feel
Mhm.
like there's a lot of fear
Mhm.
and
IEPs,
uncertainty
504s,
about
funding.
from a state and a federal
Right.
level, at least in Kansas. I'm not sure what's happening in Missouri, but
Mhm.
504s and IEPs feeling threatened.
Right.
There's been talks of wellness camps and things like that from just a lack of understanding of what neurodiversity and what helps. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious how your community is feeling and if that changes the way you guys show up or if it motivates you to just work harder.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Do you want to start? Or do you want me to take it?
You can start.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, I don't know which direction. I don't know. Well, this is what I've been ruminating on in the past couple of weeks as it relates to education because there's a lot of fear and rumblings about what to expect. Uh,
Hmm.
I do want to highlight that there's a subset of families across the board that are organizing and thinking a lot about what micro schools and homeschooling looks like. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole can of worms, but I do want to name that because it decreases the fear of um, public education, even private education, but like large systems of education being stripped up under us and not being able to do anything about it. So there's some
Right.
organizing in that way, which I
Mm-hmm.
think there's power to that, and I'm a
Definitely.
huge advocate for that. And so if parents are kind of thinking about it, I would encourage you to do your research and find people that you can talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I had always planned that Caleel was going to go to school from K to 5, and then we were going to start the homeschooling process because even outside of special education being incredibly vulnerable right now in our country, I think education for certain subsets of kids have always been vulnerable. It's
Right.
just
Yeah.
being highlighted now. I've worked in the systems for a long time. And so, honestly, what I hear in politics right now is really just a reflection of what has been happening under the radar. Unfortunately, it's just now hitting and impacting people that it didn't impact before. And
That's so
for
interesting.
and so that's from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
so
it's
I
yeah.
say that to say that like community organizing around next steps is going to be key, while also obviously thinking of ways to continue to advocate for our children who are going to be most vulnerable and impacted by this. But I know people are scared because they're incredibly dependent upon the systems that we've been dependent upon for so long to support us. But I would say to sort of transform that fear into local community organizing on how we can support our children and families locally with the
Mm-hmm.
resources that we have. I think that's where the most power lies, in my opinion.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's a really, really great question. And I mean, truthfully, I've been going back and forth between and trying to engage, but not engage to protect my mental health space. But I am at a place of fight and hope. I am hopeful for a better future because we've been saying really with the Black Lives Matter movement and after the murder of George Floyd, we as a Black and Brown community and all the subsequent deaths after that have been saying we need to burn the system down. We need to burn the system down and rebuild it collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am imagining, and this is where my hope is coming in, imagining that now that we see this system being crumbled before our eyes every single day and being strategically dismantled, that as a people we can come together in order to rebuild it collectively. I know that's very optimistic. I know that's very hopeful, but that is what's motivating me every day when I'm seeing, our attorney generals in Kansas and Missouri going to fight up against IEPs and 504s. When I see a senator in Oklahoma saying that they want to remove various related services from IEPs. Those are the types of things that I know as a community that if we band together in the masses, we can do amazing things. And it's been shown time and time and time again. And it's something that I believe in my core, the collective organizing, the coming together. It's the reason why Ivory and I joined together to create Neurodiversity Collective, to come together, bring our resources together to move forward. And so I am hopeful that we will be able to build something that's for our community and advocate for our community. In that same vein, when it comes to fighting, April 2nd is a legislative day that I would encourage everyone here that's listening to come and join. If you're on the Missouri or the Kansas side, to go to Jefferson City and go meet the different legislators. Participate in this legislative day because it's going to take people showing up, sharing their story, not just submitting the email, making the phone, but showing up and sharing your lived experience. That's going to change. And when folks hear lived experiences, you become changed by it. You can't unlearn something that you've heard that I'm experiencing. But oftentimes when we see things, when you do, well, we don't believe that's happening because it hasn't happened to me. But when you see a mom showing up that's saying, if you cut Medicaid, my child will not get this. If you cut Medicaid, I cannot do this. And it's a trickle down effect. And so that is where I'm in the space of living, of being hopeful that we can come together in a strategic, aligned way to fight for our marginalized population, such as children and families that have people that they loved with disabilities.
Sure.
Is where I've really been at. And if you're digesting all of this information, what I would encourage you to do is to not try to focus on all things and go, I'm going to help in this and this and this and this, because if you think about that cup analogy of, if you are pouring into all these separate cups, you're only making these incremental changes, versus if you focus in one, you're able to make greater. So my recommendation and to everyone is to focus on one thing that you can really pour all of your energy into to then raise awareness in that bucket. And then support the other organizations, whether that's through your time or talent or contributions, with uplifting their message. It's free to share something on Facebook. It's free to share something within your network. And those are ways that you can do something within your sphere of influence to drive effective change.
I saw a quote by Sharon Says So on
I
Instagram.
was just thinking
But
that.
she
I was
said,
just
like,
thinking this.
nothing is like a kid doesn't get free lunch or services or whatever. I mean, it listed lots of things by perpetual pessimism. So, like, I love that, and gives me hope too.
Well, and I think it's everything has felt so overwhelming. We actually did a podcast dedicated to the overwhelm a few weeks ago with a therapist, and I think it's really helpful to have somebody just water it down to, like you just said, Antoinette, find one thing. It's like, okay, I can find one thing, because it's very overwhelming thinking of all the different areas.
Well, and I think ladies like
that
you give
need
me
help.
hope too, because I mean, I'm talking from a place of privilege of my daily life.
Right.
Isn't change other than my mental health, but like hearing it from you ladies who are fighting every day for multiple marginalized communities, and then you still have that fire to continue and do your work. And I think that's very inspirational and very convicting to, if you are coming from a place where your kids are neurotypical, or you're from a white community, that your job is to educate yourself and amplify those messages.
Yeah,
Step it up.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And rest is what if they say rest is a radical act as well. So to your point, yes, keep yourself informed, extend empathy, but it's okay to rest as well. I am going to be resting after this podcast, actually. So I
Yes.
highly
Good
encourage
for
that for
you.
parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
absolutely. So, ladies, kind of in closing, we could talk to you all day. You guys are seriously amazing people. I'm sitting here in like
Thank
a
you.
state of awe. Truly, I really am. What are the best ways for our listeners or viewers to kind of either engage with you all or any upcoming like events and that kind of thing? And we can also link to all this for you too.
Absolutely.
Yes. You want to
So
go?
I'm embracing neurodiversity on all platforms, Facebook,
Okay.
Instagram, and my podcast, which is on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. My
Mhm.
books, which are very, I'll have my son's name, Caleel, in them, but it's Kaleel's Journey. There are 5 books that touch on picky eating,
Oh,
communication skills, um, safety, swim, pool rules. We know that our children typically love to navigate the water, and farm animal. And there, you can find those on Amazon or my website. And so I highly
Yeah.
encourage families to do that. If you're just starting from the base level of just wanting to expand the knowledge of your children, those you don't have to have neurodiverse children to have access to those books.
Mhm.
So there's that. And then I'm sure Antoinette is going to talk about under our Neurodiversity Collective, we have some upcoming events, one with you all, which we're really excited about, and
Yeah.
some in the summer and fall as well. But yeah, you can find me under Embracing Neurodiversity or Ivory Duncan.
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you,
Yes.
Ivory. Yeah,
Of course.
Antoinette, what do you have to add as far as finding you, engaging events?
Yes. Yes. So Neurodiversity Collective, we will be co-hosting the event, which we're so excited on April 12th. And then the next event is a disability pool party. And we're looking to finalize those details with a partner, and that will be July 12th, tentatively.
Okay. Okay.
And then we will host a respite care type night that we're looking to host, and that will be the date and time and details will be to be determined. And then on October 25th, we will host our second annual sensory friendly Boo Bash extravaganza, all under the Neurodiversity Collective. From the standpoint of Nuru, my digital platform, I am looking right now for beta testers that want to navigate our website, give me the candid feedback and say, Antoinette, this is lovely. I've been waiting for this, or Antoinette, like you got some work to do. And so you can email me at Antoinette at Nuru, neuru.app to sign up as a beta tester. And then we will also be soft launching on April 29th. So super excited to make our website live, but we will be doing that with the feedback of our beta testers. So super excited to be able to connect with everyone. And you can find us at Nuru on social media sites. That's Neuru or Antoinette Redmond. So excited to connect with the mamas and continue to build this community with all of your input.
Awesome.
Thank you for all you do, ladies.
Thank you guys both. You guys are a
Thank
force.
you.
Both of you
Thank
are a
Thank
force.
you.
you. Thank you all for
Seriously.
creating a space for this conversation. Those are the things
Absolutely.
that are going to push the needle. So we really appreciate that for
Of
sure.
course. Of
Yeah. And
course.
the ability to partner, like just being
Yes, I'm
open
Yes.
to that
excited.
feedback and
Yes.
just saying, hey, we don't know, lead the way.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we will make it happen. So to you
Right.
and your team, thank you so much for your openness and willing to be a true partner in this work.
We're excited for Egg Hunt. So
Oh,
should
yeah.
be great.
Yes. Me
All
too.
right.
Me
Awesome.
too.
All
Thank
right.
you, ladies,
Thanks,
so much.
ladies.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Have a